Welcome to the very first episode of Clarity of Thought, a new series from the team at Thought AI, where we sit down with the core team to unpack key questions from the community. So this is our way of making sure information flows clearly, honestly, and often, and to show you that we're not just building tech, we're building with you. So each episode will focus on one theme taken from the AMA threads, DMs, and discussions across the server. So the first one's all about the THT token, a topic raised by Lili Fly7738 and Blockchainmail. If your question didn't make it, don't worry. This is just the beginning. Keep them coming and we'll cover more themes soon. So part one, what role does the token actually play? So with me today, by the way, I've got our CTO, Professor Phil Grimm, and CEO, Professor Andrew Hacker, and they'll be taking us through the questions today. So why is the THT token important to the ecosystem?
So when we started building our ecosystem, we didn't yet have a blockchain. We didn't have the token. The original design sort of was a mesh network of our nodes, but we didn't have the blockchain. And we got to a point where we realized we need positive identification. We need to be able to say, no kidding, this thing is what it says it is. This person is who they say they are, and they really own this thing they say they own. And the best way we found to do that was a blockchain. So we built a blockchain. We basically the long and short of it is we are integrating the blockchain backbone and the mesh networking technology that we had already designed way before we had the blockchain. And now the blockchain forms that identity, that positive identification, encryption, all sorts of things that come out of it being a blockchain. Our fabric can take advantage of that. So that's really where it came from. It is the token itself becomes important. Then it's almost a side effect, but it becomes important because part of what we want to be able to do is allow people to monetize information, monetize data, and monetize the models themselves. And the token gives us a native way to do that from something that's already built right into the ecosystem.
Fantastic. So well, the next question was, is it replaceable essential to how it all works? So
it is essential. Now, is it replaceable? Well, sort of, yes, but that's so can I use a different token? Well, it won't be integrated into the ecosystem. I mean, when a nuance is born, it's born on the Thought blockchain, and so the Thought blockchain is essential because that's where the nuances are going to be born from. Could I do that on a different blockchain? Sure, but it would take a whole lot of development work to move it to another blockchain, and then it wouldn't be the Thought fabric anymore. It'd be somebody else's. So yeah, it's essential. It's replaceable from a strictly technical sense, but again, then it would be something else. It wouldn't be our thing.
So why design a native token instead of using fiat or an existing crypto?
Well, we thought very hard about that, and we considered and we researched building this as an ERC20 compliant on Ethereum. And what we really came down to were two things. One, of course, at the time, Ethereum was able to process like, 4 transactions a second or something, and which was never going to work for us. And the other problem was if we wanted to do the tight integration that it turns out we wanted to do, we don't control the source code for Ethereum, so they could do anything. And something they did could disable something we need. And so we decided we needed to control the code of the blockchain as well. So we built our own.
Awesome. So now we're going to go to part 2, which focuses on value, accessibility, and growth. And these questions are from Fly7738. So what happens if the token becomes too expensive for real world tasks?
So this is sort of a complicated question. with some simple parts. So we'd say, okay, so I am a fabric node operator, and I'm going to offer services in exchange for THT. Um, and so you might say, okay, well, I'm offering this service for 10 THT, which right at the moment would be 20 cents, and then all of a sudden it spikes up to $1, and so now my service costs $10 instead of 20 cents, and that would be bad. That's not a thing we want. But here's the thing: they're divisible, right? So what we can do is have a nuance that is asking money for its services, or a nuance that's paying money for its services can dynamically adjust the price. So if the real world price on an exchange of THT starts going up, the nuance can say, okay, well, I will charge less of them so that I get the same value. And later, if it's going down, well, now I can charge more of them and get the same value, and dynamically adjust those prices.
Fantastic. So is there a risk that adoption could stall if prices spike?
I would say adoption of the fabric, probably no. The big risk for a price spike would be, of course, people being able to afford to stake masternodes. But being a fabric participant does not require being a masternode. So I would say no. Being a fabric node doesn't depend on the price at all. So I don't think that's really a risk we have to worry about. Again, it does affect who's going to be able to stake masternodes, but that's
Yeah,
a separate issue, and not really an issue of adoption of the fabric.
cool. Now, could different pricing layers emerge?
I don't really see a path for that. Um, in that, are there different classes of thought that cost different amounts of money? I don't see that. But dynamically speaking, again, the idea of being able to do dynamic pricing, I suppose one thing that someone who's implementing a nuance or implementing a service could do is offer tiered pricing. Um, but that wouldn't be something intrinsic to the price of the token itself. That's something that someone could implement if they wanted to for their services. Um, but as far as having different versions of thought worth different amounts of money, I don't really see a path to that.
Okay, fantastic. Now, moving on to part three, and I guess the big question is, what if there's a buyout? So, and these questions are from Lili, by the way. So, is selling the company ever a goal? And if so, what could trigger that?
I'm going to defer to Andrew on that one, since that's more of a policy than a technical question. So I'm going to let Andrew take that.
Sure.
Yeah, well, it's a tough question to answer. I mean, certainly without a doubt, our goal with conceiving and building this company has always been to really generate that value and create a fabric and a safe AI. And we all of the current partners within the company and all the people working on us with the company, that's all their goal too. They want to see something built, something that's really great and really provides that value across the board. So we do not have any plans to sell the company. Now the question of could it ever be a goal, it's very open-ended. And what potentially could trigger that, again, it's it comes down to scope. It comes down to a potential very large partner. And certainly everything we have in mind, if we were ever to sell it, I mean, we can't say definitively it'll never happen. I don't think the odds of it happening are that large, but certainly if it was the right partner and it was something that was very synergistic with what we're doing, we'd certainly look at that. So again, no plans. We really are extremely focused on building and continuing to build out this ecosystem and to generate more and more value. Certainly with respect to how all the other AI companies are these days, and what they're delivering and the amount of money that they've got invested in their technologies, it's something, there's a long runway before I think something like that ever happens. So I hope that answered that question.
It does. I think thought token holders would be very pleased with that response. So if the project is acquired, what would happen to those token holders?
Well, again, this is kind of an interesting question because, um, at its core, even before the fabric functionality, thoughts of blockchain and the blockchain code itself is open source. It's out there. So somebody acquiring the company, the blockchain still exists regardless of who owns the thought company. The blockchain still exists. It's still running on open source software. So unless some company makes some really concerted effort to take it down, the blockchain will still be there, and the token holders will still have their tokens. And quite frankly, all of us who work for the company are all holders too. So we would like to see that continue as well. So
Cool. So the last question for that one is, would you protect the community and their stake?
and I would say that again, the financial world is weird and crazy. We would, I believe, and Andrew and I have talked about this in the past. I believe that if we were looking to sell to somebody, part of those negotiations would include, hey, you're not intending to go out there and rug pull the whole community, are you? Because we wouldn't be happy about that, and we don't want to sell to you if that's the case, right? So that would certainly be. Now, can we enforce that after a sale's over? Well, that's a big question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's not something I have a good answer to, but we would certainly be.
Contractually, we certainly could.
Yeah, I mean, we can put stuff in the agreement. The question is, can we enforce it afterwards? That's the thing,
Yeah.
But sure, we would be looking to do that. If we were going to sell, we would be looking to protect the community. Because again, we're not just the people who run Thought AI. We are also part of the community, and we would not like to be rug pulled either.
Exactly. Cool. Awesome. So the fourth and final part focuses on supply nodes and ecosystem docking. So these are from Blockchainmail. Now, is there a fixed block time or halving model?
So yes, this is a nice easy one because so our halving happens every 1,299,382 blocks. With our average block time is 1.6 minutes, about 1.617 minutes is the average block time the blockchain tries to maintain. And so that works out to about 809 blocks a day. If you divide the 1.3 million by 809 blocks, that gives you just under 4 years. But it is based on the actual block height, not on the time. So yeah, it's that 1,299,382 blocks. Next halving is going to happen on or about the 23rd of February of next year, of 26.
Awesome. And what's the max number of masternodes theoretically possible?
So theoretically, if we tied up every thought coin that will ever exist in a masternode, we could have 5,149 masternodes. Obviously, not every thought coin that exists is going to get tied up in masternodes, or we would be kind of in trouble because there wouldn't be any thought coins circulating anymore. So effectively, right now, given what the circulating and mined supply are right now, right around 1,500, a little over 1,500 is what could exist. And of course, if we're at 1,020, that means we've got about 2/3 of the number of masternodes we can have at the moment. Now, when more thought's mined and there's more out there, then of course that number goes up. But yeah, the absolute maximum 5,149, and that assumes every thought coin's locked up.
Yeah. Hey, I'll just jump in there real quick too. One thing to consider with masternodes, max number of masternodes, supply, and all of those things, there is an economic dynamic to it. The more masternodes there are out there, the more that are more THTs that's locked up, and even with the halving stuff too, right? I mean, you see that in Bitcoin that the price goes wild and has a super run, not not immediately after a halving, but at some point in the near future after, right? Because economic value is also somewhat dependent on supply and demand too.
Driven by
So
scarcity. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and if we did get to the point where, hypothetically, theoretically, if all 1,500 master nodes based on circulating supply were locked up and staked, I mean, it would be kind of phenomenal. But I think that would significantly increase the price, right? Because that scarcity would be there. So should just keep that in mind. There's definitely an economic modeling piece to all this too. So just a little supplement there.
Yeah, I find it amazing that I think it was 81% of circulating supply is actually locked up currently in masternodes. So we've got a good community there. They all seem to believe in what's being done here. So shout out to them. But so will third-party builders be able to plug into the system easily?
Yes, is the short answer. The longer answer is it's always been part of the roadmap, and I know that's a point of contention at the moment. But in the roadmaps that we've published previously, people, you might remember that one of the parts of the roadmap was developer tools, and that's still true. Once we have some things that are in progress right now done for stabilizing the integration between the blockchain nodes and the fabric nodes, because eventually that's going to be one thing, right? There's not going to be two separate pieces of software. It'll be one. Then the next thing we're going to work on is putting together APIs, software development kits, documentation. I doubt we'll write our own IDE, but maybe plugins for the most common IDEs for people to be able to develop their own nuances, and then not only nuances, but also the components and capabilities that go along with being a fabric node. People might develop stuff we didn't even think of, but absolutely, our intent has always been that we are building the ecosystem, and yes, we will build solutions on top of our own ecosystem. But we also want lots of other people to build solutions on top of our ecosystem.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know a few people very eager to go and plug in. Now, the final question is, do use cases like Sawazel require the THT token? Maybe explain as well just a bit for those who aren't unaware what that is.
Yeah, I'm going to let Andrew grab this one.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Yeah, so any use cases that we're developing will always require the THT token, and exactly how Phil kind of described it before is that THT is a foundational economic and monetization piece of anything that nuances and that AI does. So in the ZaoCell project, we did a sort of a private project with them based on agriculture, sourcing, and combining underserved small farmers and packaging up, not only the quantities of their output and their product, but also kind of putting that all together to make attractive for extremely large purchasers that always found it difficult to work with smaller groups and smaller outputs. But yeah, I mean that all requires the THT token. It's a very integral piece of any solution that we do. So that's the answer.
Fantastic. So that wraps it up for now. Thank you, professors. Now, thanks again to Lili Fly7738 and Blockchainmail. You lit the fuse for the first episode. If we didn't get to your question, not to worry. Please just drop in to our Discord. We've got an AMA channel in there. So just pop your questions in there and we'll tackle them in the future. So this is what Clarity of Thought is all about: open dialogue, real answers, and building together. So goodbye for now and catch you soon.